Hello everyone. My name is Jaydeep. I'm the coordinator of the Alumni Office. Those of you who don't know me yet, uh, welcome all to one of the first online reunion slash webinar. And I would like to welcome the batch of 2000 UD. Uh, we welcome you by the Alumni Office and the CEPT University. And it's a great initiative. You guys have taken time out of your and starting this discussion. So we are live, we are recording, and we are good to go. So, Anubandh, you can give a brief introduction of your batch mates and we can start.
Yes, it's just that at 10 we should begin, or we should start right away.
We should start. It's like 1 minute to 10. We are good. We're already recording in live, so it should be fine.
Right. Yes. It's, yeah, of course, it's, as Jaideep said, it's fantastic to have this reunion here after so many years, 20 years. Yes, some of us have met each other in between, but all of us together after 20 years online, seeing each other is a fantastic feeling. And we all thought that it will be a great idea to meet again and also discuss something. So the question was, what shall we discuss? And when we all pondered upon this question, the thought which came out together was that we all should discuss something which is relevant to present situation, and which is also relevant to all of us. And then we all remembered that 20 years back, we discussed this topic in the group discussion, which was part of the entrance examination of CEPT when we applied for urban design postgraduate course. And the topic reads as Indian cities as overgrown villages with a dash of .com, is urban design relevant? So that's the kind of topic which was given to us. That's the topic which was given to us. And when we relooked at this topic, we realized that yes, perhaps this is the topic which still holds relevance. Indian cities, some of the cities have gone to a major change. Urbanism has gone many steps ahead. But there are many cities in India which are still function with an agrarian economy and all such things. That's one thing. And we are all now under lockdown, are so much so dependent upon the internet technology and different other online tools which we use. So the .com, the dash of .com is still perhaps relevant. And with all of this, not that it is questioned, the relevance of urban design is questioned in a negative way, but in a positive way, that how now we look forward towards the field of urban design. So before I start discussion for today, I would like to introduce all my batchmates and the participants of this reunion, as well as a webinar discussion which we have organized today. I will begin with Dr. Ashwini Patil. She is right now professor in Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Architecture, and she's going to be very soon joining as principal in MIT College in Pune. And she is also managing director of Pune Vinal Foundation, doing great work, transforming positively many spaces in Pune. Geetanjali Rao is with us. She is professor at School of Architecture in KLE Technological University, Hubli. She is also a director of ADEI, a firm where she is director. We are also Hiral Shah is with us. She is architect and visiting faculty at Masters in Urban Planning, Urban and Regional Planning in MS University, Baroda. Then Rishikesh Ashtikar is with us, who is an urban designer and independent researcher. He is professor in PVP College of Architecture in Pune, in undergraduate as well as postgraduate programs. With us is today Kamesh Srinivasan, who is an urban planner, and he works in Jacobs in Dubai. We have Madhurima Vagmare, who is unfortunately not today with us. She stays in Delhi. Then we have Rahul Navle, who is vice president in Surgeon Research and Planning Foundation. He is also associate professor in BN College of Architecture, Pune. Shabbir Lahiri, who is associate professor in DSATM College in Bangalore. Vipa Zariwala, principal architect in Space Art Studio and also associate professor in the college. Vishal Shah, who is a professor and program coordinator in of urban design program, postgraduate program in urban design in SCET Surat. And he is also a partner in Angan Architects, which is an award-winning firm and doing great work in the field of urban design. Yashodhan Tere, who is chief architect in the Vadhva group in Mumbai. And myself, Anubandh Hambarde, and I am, after being in profession for so many years, I am now associate professor in PVP College of Architecture in postgraduate program in urban design in Pune. With this introduction, I would like to begin today's discussion on the topic which I have already announced, and to take that topic ahead, saying that Indian cities as overgrown villages with a dash of .com is urban design relevant. So as I given the background that we are all staying at home, we have unlearned that we need to go outside for our daily needs. There are certain things which are happening even if we are at home, which means that we are not going out. We are perhaps temporarily suspending social interaction. We are doing social distancing. And there is a talk about a density reduction in spaces, in housing, in built form, and all such things. So as we all know, during our course, in postgraduate course in urban design, we all have seen three events, quite catastrophic events. One was when we joined the first week, there were floods in Ahmedabad. Then we faced earthquake. Then also we saw riots, unfortunate incidents of riots in Gujarat. These three catastrophic events we have seen, so we are not new to catastrophes together. And all world over, whether it is World War II or many other catastrophes, plagues and earthquakes and so many other things, have changed cities in terms of their attitude of how to structure a city, how the morphology of city is, what is the concept of spaces which cities have. With this kind of a initial note, I would like to initiate discussion among ourselves that as a batch of urban designers, graduates, and after 20 years of practice and education, how each one of us see that what opportunity it gives to rethink, restructure, and perhaps learn, unlearn many phenomena, many things which cities which is happening in cities, and how to look forward to restructure city. So we can begin with Dr. Ashwini Patil, if she can begin with her opening remarks, and then of course one after the other, I will request everyone to speak. Ashwini.
Yeah, thank you, Anubandh. While we have reopened this discussion on cities, villages, digital revolution, and relevance of urban design, it is important to really look at the roots of all of this, which I feel is man-nature relationship. While talking about man-nature relationship, Carl says that culture is agent, natural area is a medium, and cultural landscape is the result. Thus, culture acts on the canvas of nature and renders the landscape its meaning. And this culture is not only created by man, but animals, plants, and so many other things. From forest culture, we got into the agriculture, we got into industrial culture, and then finally we're talking about digital culture. At one point, there was agricultural revolution. At one time, it was industrial revolution. And today with this pandemic, we are standing at a threshold of the digital revolution. And undoubtedly, this is going to affect and put its mark on the canvas of nature. And it's going to contribute in a new way, in a different way to the cultural landscape of the place. everyone has experienced this, that out of our entire lifespan of 70, 80 years, we just took a pause of 2 months and we are experiencing fresh air like never before, birds chirping throughout the day, peacocks dancing in the backyard, and I can see Sinhagad from the terrace in Pune, and so many things. Everyone is experiencing so much. At the same time, uh, being a contributor to the urban aesthetics in the city, yesterday I noted one of the very important news, which said Trump death clock. One can also see these digital installations in Times Square in New York, which is called as Trump's death clock, which is showing the government inaction towards this pandemic. All these things are affecting cities. A quick leap from street art, that rebellious street art, to rebellious digital art. We can see that the cities are being affected, so the urban infrastructure and so the urban scapes. And I think, yes, with this dash of .com, urban design is going to be very, very relevant. Over to you, Anubandh.
Yes, so very nice opening remark by Ashwini Patil. We can now I would request Geetanjali Rao to begin her opening remarks. Yeah, I think Geetanjali, you will have to unmute your mic, switch on your mic.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Anubandh.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, urban design is relevant now at the time of pandemics. As Anubandh has said, that while studying, we have witnessed 3 different kinds of disasters, both man-made and natural. And here's a time when all of us are locked in, and though we are not making use of so-called our outdoor spaces, be it open spaces or market, everything is at your doorstep. I'm more concerned about the people who are from the informal sector and what role urban design would play in cities as well as in villages. I still believe that villages are far better when it comes to their share of fresh air or fresh food or naturally grown or locally grown vegetables, which the city dwellers do not enjoy. So here is a time where we have our open spaces are shrinking in the cities, while the open spaces in the villages are far better in the form of agricultural lands or forest areas. Now here is a challenge, that how do you relook at these urban voids or open spaces of different scales, as well as I would like to see the role of heritage in adding to the resilience or responding to the resilience, whether heritage plays an important role, because it is definitely an asset and it's not something which should be shunned off. Now here is the time, how do you repurpose these heritage, which is of lesser known importance, and our villages are scattered with many forts, many palaces which are redundant and not to use. Now here's a time where how do you put it to a quick repurpose, where, for example, you need a space to put up temporary hospitals or a place for shelter in the case of floods in 2009. A typical World Heritage Site transformed into a place for the whole set of people, the villagers who took shelter in the temple complexes, where there was a mass feeding happening, cooking happening. And here's the time that how do we need to relook at the consumption pattern. I believe very strongly that this pandemic makes us to think that there's something called frugal urbanism, or frugal living, or a simple living, doing with your own hands, whether it's your farming or whether it's your roof garden or whether it's growing plants within your open spaces, which you take responsibilities and actually nurture. While doing that, we need to look at it, that can we relook at the way the mobility works? Do we need to walk or do we need to travel so long for work? So can we relook at cities or towns which are, say, within 10-kilometer diameter, we are able to live, work, and play, and take care, and take ownership, and And then in giving importance to informality or informal sectors, people who are totally dependent on informal sectors where they have to meet or they have to interact or they use the open spaces, how do you respond to those sectors of people? We are very safe in our houses, but how about those? And how about those who are living in slums? And what way urban design should, what role it should play? Should it be more of now, for example, it cannot be just beautifying cities or creating more parks. It's like re-looking at open space in the form of productive landscape, or how do you make your, how do you relook at your city from health point of view? What kind of system should be in place in terms of technology? With this, I would like to pass it on to the next person who should be contributing. I'm willing to listen, but this is the take from my end, that nature and culture plays an important role. Villages and informal sectors need to be relooked at. The migrants should be welcomed back into the city, and rather than being thrown out, you know what's happening around. So how does our city prepares for getting back the migrants and make them, make the sense of belonging has to come, that we are responsible in bringing that sense of belonging? How do you ensure health and safety to those people who are going to definitely come back and help us in our day-to-day lives? Thank you.
Yeah, Gitanjali, very, very insightful. And now I will request Hiral Shah to begin to give us an opening remark.
So firstly,
Yeah,
thank you.
Hiral, you will perhaps.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Sep, for this opportunity to reunite with my batchmates from 20 years ago with a subject that was relevant then and even now. So while what the dot-com era could not initiate, pandemic surely did. Not only did it force us to work from home, but do everything from home rather, from working and learning to shopping and socializing. So now, is this experience here to stay? Is this the new normal? Well, we do not know that. Always prepared for this. So the question is, would all this work from home free up space? What would happen to places like large office buildings or shopping complexes? For metropolitan areas, it would mean the entire CBD areas. So I think it will definitely have one very specific advantage. It would mean less travel, therefore less vehicles, and which would be footprint. And most importantly, it would free up our street space. So that brings me at this point to a critical component of the city: streets. In the name of smart cities, we have been creating mindless infrastructure. We need to design streets not from the vehicle point of view, but from people's point of view. Well, let us think of walkability before motorability. Now, see, a situation like a walkability becomes very important and desirable in such pandemics where our movements are so restricted. So I think but walkability, I feel, is something which is only discussed in theory in a top-down plan. Designer can play a role. They bridge the gap between planners and end users of the public realm. Therefore, I feel a bottom-up approach to city planning will help in fostering neighborhoods that pride in their little villages. We might create more resilient areas. Communities can be built if we build from neighborhood point of view. It will lead to more cared for society and thereby a more cared for city. So once that happens, we are more prepared for such disasters, no matter whether it's an earthquake or a pandemic or anything, any other kind of disaster. So the planning process. Like if urban development plan is an overarching vision of a city for the next 20, 30 years, the neighborhood planning is a continuous process within that larger framework. And for that to happen, cohesive city needs to be divided into compatible smaller areas for community living. I use the word community planning because there are existing neighborhoods and new ones coming up and joining them. And to create desirable neighborhoods, we require inclusive planning. We require the involvement of end users. Had we been able to create such tiny neighborhoods, we would have surely been able to contain this kind of a pandemic in a much better way. I feel. So at present, our cities are divided into these jurisdictional boundaries. For planning purposes, I feel like Geeta was just mentioning, we need to understand our community at a different level, you know. We need to divide it like as sectors which are communally, culturally, and socially cohesive, which is topographically or in landform wise, which is more cohesive, and build a community in that form. That is where I feel that we need to build communities then rather than city plannings. We need to focus on community planning, is what I understand. Build resilient communities, resilient neighborhoods, which is able to handle such pandemics or disasters in that manner. Over to Anubandh.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Hiril. And yes, a very valid point of not just top-down approach, but also getting into the scales of various scales of neighborhoods and different scales of the city. Great point. Now I will request Rishikesh Ashtikar to give the opening remarks.
Yeah. Thank you, Anubandh, for all these things. I'm just correlating this entire event of pandemic in the current times. Now let's look at it. Like, see, this pandemic is happening today. Now we are looking at a civilization which thousands of years of a history which was there, and within the entire history, there have been earlier times of pandemic and situations where at this particular time though this entire kind of a thing is us, we must understand that entire this thing is a speck, this is like a speck in the ocean of the civilization what we are looking at. So now we look at, so there are two effects. Number one, there is a effect which is which is for the immediate kind of a future, where of course all these things which the people earlier have talked about will happen definitely. If you look at the larger thing now, if we this entire topic of Indian cities has been overgrown villages. Now we will understand that, see, villages have always been a part of the city. Look at the city like it has 123 villages within the city limits which are there. Out of that, recently where 11 villages were merged and before that 23 villages were merged in the city. Now we have a city which is full of urban villages, and we have a peripheries which are there, which has got all these villages which are there, where there are a lot other things which is cultural friction and all these things. Apart from the growth of there is an existing population which is existing, and there is a growth of the new development which is coming onto the city which is there. Now this kind of a growth paradigm which one can see. Now if we look at all these things as maybe I think Hiral pointed out, where we look at it like a neighborhood. Now this neighborhoods which each one of the critical parameters which will start emerging out of the pandemic. Now we see earlier you have to travel so much for work and this thing. Now when we come to realize that work can happen from home, and you are more connected to the immediate the community and immediate neighborhood. In all these cases, whether it is cities which are the core of the city or the surrounding the city, definitely it will be start happening like cities will perform more like the clusters of neighborhood for the immediate kind of a thing. Definitely the role of public spaces and streets etc. are reduced for the current times, but it will emerge. It will when maybe vaccine will be found out, and when things will start becoming normal, people will come on to street, they will celebrate, everything will start happening normal. In a larger sense, there will be certain things which are put onto some kind of rules which are there, which will be there on this. So that is what I wanted to say on this particular aspect. Over to the next participant.
Yeah, thank you, Rishikesh. A very nice aspect of peri-urban, peripheral urbanism, and all such things. Now I request Kamesh Srinivasan to provide his opening remarks.
Hey, thanks Anubandh, and thanks Jaydeep. Couple of things I wanted to highlight, right? This is just little different to probably what I learned from the past 20 years of practicing outside India.
Yes, please.
Two things. One, when we studied architecture, we joined architecture thinking that it's a science program. But when we finished architecture, we found out that architecture can't be taught. Similar thing happened with urban design. When we joined urban design, we thought, okay, urban design will make cities better and we will do urban design. But when I finished urban design, after practicing for so long, one thing is very sure, urban design is not a course, it's a way of living, right?
Yes.
So it all starts with care. And care is the word here, which is prevalent in wherever we practice urban design, care for each other. And whether it is .com, whether it is .net, or whether it is .mars, until this basic instinct of care for each other prevails, urban design is relevant, right? So urban design, what I learned is not just a study, but it's a kind of way of life. And we all have a part to play, whether we are urban designers, we are not urban designers. In olden days, all these great cities, like what Ashtekar talked about, or what Gita talked about, um, nobody was urban designers as by profession or as by the way they studied. They became urban designers by practice. So until that instinct of care between every human being prevails, urban design prevails. And that is something that we need to start thinking about. Urban design is not a profession, at least for me. Probably planning is, but urban design is not. It is more about how do you live, how do you care for each other, and how do you do it as urban designers? We do it at a physical manifestation. A sociologist does it as caring with people, an anthropologist does that with taking care of each other. But an urban designer tries to bring all these things into a physical reality. So let's all agree that probably that is one way of looking at urban design after 20 years of being and practicing urban design. It's no more a profession, it's a way of life. Over to you, Anubandh.
Yeah, so great. It's a great comment, Kamesh. Yes, we all believe that it's a way of life of making life better. So surely, now we are missing Madhurima Vagmare, and now I request Rahul Naule to begin his opening remarks.
Great, Anuban, thanks a lot, and also Jaideep and Seb for all these things. Kamesh, you had made a very nice statement that it is a way of life, urbanism, and I believe in that. I would like to make 3 points over here. Like first is, and I see we started with this Indian cities as overgrown villages with a dash of .com. Is urban design relevant? I would like to divide this into two. One is our Indian cities, overgrown villages is one part, and second is probably if urban design is relevant. If I go to the first part, I mean, did our cities undertook growth as a system? I mean, our cities grew up and then we annexed the part which were there in the periphery to it and say, okay, now this is what a big cities or a metropolitan cities. And that comes to the second question, that were we prepared for these kind of growth that's were happening, or the city was there? And that's a very important question over here, because that's what Indian cities have been. Over a period of time, what are more economically relevant at this particular present stage, but socially the relevance have lost to some extent. And here I would like to point out the book written by Thomas Friedman, that the world is flat. And here it was a metaphor that the world is an even playing field for economic opportunities, but unfortunately it reflected in the growth of the city, that we playground we became all the same, and in the process identity. So be it Hyderabad or Bangalore or Pune, probably I take a photograph in Pune and say, okay, I went to Bangalore and this is what I've seen over there. There's a possibility this happens, and that's why we need to be. You really need to have a goal, and the goalpost might change definitely. I mean, you need to shift. know where your goal is, but having a goal is very important. I can give you an example of Hong Kong over here. Hong Kong made a very simple statement. They said that let us position ourselves as the world city of Asia. When they make these politicians, the bureaucrats, the people, they started going and working in that direction, and that's how they developed their transportation system, their communication system, the tourism sector, the finances, or whatever it is. So what I feel is that if you really have to see city as a whole, you don't just allow it to grow. See what is the vision, how in with what direction you want to give. It's been decades that I'm hearing that Pune is the Oxford of the East. But what have we done to maintain that identity? Have we said that okay, if Pune is Oxford of the East, education is more important and relevant over here? So have our urban spaces reflected what that identity of a city is? Probably I don't see that. Always try to, like Kola says, that sustainability should not ultimately land up like an ornament. It has to ingrain in your identity. Everybody starts working towards it. I personally feel it that way. Anubandh, to you.
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. Great remark saying that yes, one size fits all is not a great approach, and we need to create identities and diversity among our cities. Now we invite Shabir Lahiri for his opening remarks. Shabir.
Yeah, so basically, we talk about urban design, no? But you see, the urban design, the field has been developed in US. Okay, like it started off in US, but still, you can see that they are suffering the most. Okay, even though urban design, the cities have some sort of urban design scale and all. So is urban design as a profession failing? Also, we can ask. Yes, since now US is the most affected of all cases all over the world. But still, India it's relevant, is it not? Because architecture only looks at a plot and a building, and urban planners are also not really able to think about aspects of city spaces and urban spaces and all that. So urban design provides that link between architecture and planning as such. So this gap is generally filled by urban design, is it not? So what we have to understand is living is not just about living in a good house, but the city also is important. Like we don't really have pride in our cities. Okay, like we are not as people really bothered about our cities, and like so what is basically required is a policy, like what is a good urban space, what is the character of the space. So certain of the good news is some of the objectives are being realized. Like you will see traffic and congestion and all that. We'll see that certain people they are opposing to they are supporting the removal of automobiles from a particular street. Like for example, in Bangalore, we have this Avenue Road and Brigade Road. Like people are trying to pedestrianize that space. Okay, so people are still thinking in a urban design way. Like so again, if you see cities like Mumbai, okay, where people it's one of the most attractive city of India, and people still flock to Mumbai for a brighter future and all that. So, but still, it's a terrible place. Okay, so we say no, Mumbai is a great city, but a terrible place. So, but still you then do like Mumbai also has excellent pockets of urban design. That's what urban design is there in our cities, but it's in pockets. Okay, like gated communities and things like that. So. But what I feel is after post independence, like we have very poorly planned cities. Okay, maybe some exceptions are there, like Chandigarh, and we find some urban design concepts there. But otherwise, and of course, the old cities also we can learn from them, but they do not work for the today's life, because you see the streets of the old cities, they are very narrow. Okay, the car and all cannot go through it. So these are some problems with the old cities. Okay, but so what I would say is that today's cities, we have to synthesize tradition and modernism. Okay, whatever was there, say in Jaipur. Okay, like we have some, it has some urban design idea because it has a Vastu Purush Mandala, and that king during that time he designed Jaipur as 9 squares, that all those chopas and all. So there is some urban design that way, but still, so we have to synthesize the traditional aspect. Okay. Today we are missing out all that also. Okay, we have not learned from the past, and all those things. Still, we have some examples of urban design, like in Bombay, we have this Shivaji Park. You have all these theater, schools and churches and mosques and all around it. Certain examples of urban design are there, but in pockets, like the Balad Estate or Nariman Point or Connaught Place. So that's it, Anubandh. Next.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Shabir. Yeah, good point that we need to learn from past, learn from the examples. I now invite Vipa Zariwala to give us her opening remarks.
Hi, Anubandh. Thank you, Jaideep, for all the coordination. I too feel like Rishikesh that this pandemic situation is temporary. This temporary is long, though, but it is going to end, and it will probably change a few situations in the way we probably work. But I still feel that city and its essence, the public realms, will still have a greater role to play in the lives of the people. Now, since pandemic, I said this COVID pandemic is temporary, I say, but other situations, I'll give you my experience. A few months back, we had heavy rains in Nagpur, and there was a waterlogging problem. So almost all the vehicles were floating. And I'd been to college that day, and half of the college was empty. More than half the college was empty, and of course, only the faculties were there. And we realized that only the faculties from the older part of the city were present in the college. Now, I live in the older part of the city. So there was no waterlogging problem in my area. But in all the newer areas, you had, you cannot use your vehicle to drive. So what I wanted to tell you is we have to move back to our older settlements and take cues from them in form and character. We need to understand how they were designed, keeping in mind the context, whether it be topography or climate or the cultural context. It had a connect with the people. So there was a people participation, and hence that connect with the people, which is very important, I feel, which in today's context, in the planning policies that we have generated, this connect is missing. This context is missing, which I think we should be more mindful about. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vipa. Yeah, good point. Again, same resonance of learning from past and looking at our cities much more critically. Now I invite Vishal Shah to provide his opening remarks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. It brings us to, I'll take for this entire discussion further from what Vipa was talking about, because I think there are a lot of points that have been covered as a part of this entire discussion. But what it brings us to, there are two questions that I would like to address. One is about the resilience that we are talking about. Okay, resilience not only from the environmental point of view, but also from the community point of view, which Hiral was talking about, environmental point of view, from the point of view of healthcare and things like that. So when we started with the whole discussion of, like from villages to an overgrown village to, how have we transcended these scales in terms of urban design? Because as urban designers and an urban design as a profession, we were always given the gray area, something that was in between of architecture and urban planning. Okay, and we always had this difficulty in understanding, can I get into the plot? Can I get into the policy, or should I stay in between? Okay, because suddenly if you start kind of commenting on the development plan, that's not something you're supposed to do. Suddenly you start getting into the plot, that's not your property. So what are we left with? We are left with the in-betweens, right? So we are all left with grays. So, but at the same time, I see in it a great opportunity to kind of bind everything together, because those grays are where, the life happens. Life in terms of public life that we are talking about, life in terms of socializing that we are talking about, and all of us, what we are missing is that gray right now, right? I think that's what we really need to understand, and that's where I feel somehow as a profession in this last 20 years, what we have missed is to kind of mitigate this transition from these overgrown villages with the help of technology. So I think somehow our mindset have not been able to adopt things, and we have lost the architectural idea of the city, which we are not able to yet achieve. We are not able to make the cities beautiful, but at the same time we have also lost the learning from the villages in terms of community. So I think strengthening community and kind of using the technology at the same time, I think can be a long term answer to this entire thing. May it be healthcare, may it be the open spaces not only in terms of green open spaces, but also blue open spaces, because water is an important thing that we are going to face all the urban areas. That's why the resilience comes in. So how do we kind of take all these things further? So there are more of questions rather than solutions right now with us. So I think we should start addressing that to a greater extent. So that's what my point in terms of addressing this overgrown villages thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. Yeah, no, great hint about blue open spaces, green open spaces. It's a great point which you brought in the discussion. I would now request Yashodhan Tere to provide the opening remarks.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Anubandh, and thank you, Jaideep, and also my thanks to CEPT Alumni Body for giving us this opportunity. I think there are wonderful points which have been already touched by all my friends over here. Here talking about the dash of .com kind of forcing us to be at home and still work, and Rahul mentioning about a vision to the city, and many other such relevant points. I would like to put forth a couple of my thoughts, which is mainly in the city which I'm living, which is Mumbai. So historically, we have seen that people migrate to cities in search of opportunities and work and to settle there. Now the point is, once the migrants have become part of the city, they are the citizens. So I think it's utmost important to cater to the entire need of the citizens, whether it's infra, whether it's housing, and many other needs of the living. Now, the issue, what happens is, like, one is unable to speculate the growth of the cities. And in the event you're unable to speculate the growth of the cities, you definitely don't know what to cater for. So there is a quantum which comes in the picture. Now, the main problem which the majority of the metros in our country are facing is with the density and the land being the most expensive element of any urban development. So, there are two classes which gets divided into the whole population. One is so-called the privileged one, and one who so-called the unprivileged one. And this segregation of the classes results into a very imbalanced segregation of the density. The privileged ones always get the right balance between the built versus the open, whereas the ones which are so-called unprivileged, they always kind of fight for this kind of an open land or an open environment. The problem of the density always existed in the metros. It's just that the epidemic has voiced it and shouted it now, look at me, try and resolve this. I think urban design always was the need of the time and will always remain the need of the time. Many people touched upon the land uses and the architecture and a nice scale which exists between these two, which defines the public realm. I think it is important that when we look at a city, we definitely can't just look at into two-dimensional format, but we need to spread the boundaries of the cities. You need to tap the fringe areas. You need to tap, like in case of Mumbai, there is a larger area which is Mumbai metropolitan region, which has been tapped for the development. But it's not just enough to take that as satellite towns. We certainly don't want to end up another new Bombay. There has to be growth centers which needs to be spread across the terrain. The growth centers is the one which eventually would sustain the immediate localities, the immediate neighborhood surrounding it. You don't want people who are probably living 2 hours from far from the mainland, and then traveling all the way to South Mumbai for the work. It's somebody even touched upon the importance of the transportation. You need to kind of reinforce the different fabrics of the cities, whether it's a social fabric, whether it's a fabric of the transportation, whether it's a fabric of the housing. All these needs to have an equal balance. One needs to work towards that. I mean, Rahul touched upon the development about in Hong Kong. There are different long islands in Hong Kong which are developed, which are still nicely connected to the main land in Hong Kong. But I think it's important that if we create enough growth centers across the terrain and give opportunities to people to spread, then I think it will be a right balance which will be struck. There will be healthier spaces, definitely, as Vishal pointed out, and I also remember Vishal saying in some other webinar that it's not only about the greens or the parks. It's about any public space. It's about railway station. It's about any other community places where this balance is really important. You really need to emphasize about the public realm. This situation is something which is temporary. The temporary may extend beyond 6 to 9 months, but eventually people will move out. They would want to move out. So the question is, are we relevant? Along with the urban design is also the behavioral practices which are going to be very important. How do people behave in public spaces? It's a big question mark when it comes to Indian community. I mean, pardon me to say that, but it's a serious issue. So you're creating them a space, you're creating them that vertical dimension, which is giving a character to their space. But they equally need to be responsible about their own behavior into these public spaces. Thank you, Anubandh. I think you can take it further.
Yeah. So great point, Yashodhan. Yes. How do we manage growth? How do we manage densities along with transportation, and how people take forward, own a space and feel responsible about a public space. So yeah. So I think collectively we have raised many points and diverse points, and we also collectively are fairly establishing that. Yes, not just that it is relevant, the urban design profession is relevant, the approach which urban designers take and urban design as a field take is relevant. Not just that it's relevant, but it's also perhaps need enough of an hour. Perhaps we as a professional or as member of the field are unable to do enough perhaps. And yes, not that everybody necessarily an individual is at fault. Many times the situation, many times the socio-economic political situations are also making us do certain things in certain manner. But yes, perhaps we still have to do a lot, and perhaps we need to be much more in number to be heard, to be so that we can act upon certain situation and all these things. And also we collectively are saying that yes, this is the opportunity which has given us a pause where we can come together the way we are coming together and different other forums and think and rethink of how we can move forward from here. So now, of course, I'm coming to the concluding part of our discussion, and I'm requesting everybody to have a quick, quick 30 seconds to 45 seconds to maximum 1 minute kind of a response to the question which I'm raising here. Is that as an individual and as a member of this fraternity of urban designers, how and what we would like to do things differently? What difference we would like to make? What change we would like to make in the field, in the education, in practice, or our own outlook towards cities and spaces? Since we have now established that yes, we have this pause, we can relook. Now, how do we think that what we can change in ourselves, in our practice, in our education, or in spaces? How we can do things differently? And we will follow the same sequence. So I would request Dr. Ashwini Patil to start with the response as conclusion.
Okay. Thanks, Anubandh, and thanks everyone for raising such valid points. To answer your question as like what should be our role, I think one of the most important things which probably we have missed out is the health. Jaan hai to jahan hai. And right now, everyone is only concentrating on physical health. Probably the mental health and the social health could be the area which the urban designers will have to venture into. Because if, being an academician, if I start looking at the education as only e-learning process or an online process, then after a few years, I think we will all land up into a different kind of mental health issues. And because the universities do not only provide academic teaching, but beyond that, there is a lot of peer learning. People go to universities to share emotions and thoughts and exchange ideas, and also teachers who are our role models, they inspire you, they motivate you. All those little things, they will affect the mental health. It will really affect the social health, because if we kind of everyone starts working from home, or large chunk of society starts working from home, then probably the health of the society, the interrelationships within the society will be an issue in future. Probably the social capital on which the smaller neighborhoods generally thrive on, and the underprivileged sector which thrives on the social capital, I think that will get majorly affected. So probably with this digital revolution, the urban designer should look into the mental and physical and social aspects of the development and the awareness within the people, and how do you really build up those communities with community participation, with engagement, with more sense of belonging and interdependence. I think that would be my take on this.
Right, Ashwini. Great point. We now jump to Hiral, and then perhaps we will come back later to Gitanjali. So, Hiral Shah, your response.
See, like going back to what I was trying to say earlier, we need to have an inside-out approach. And for that to happen, I really feel that as an urban designer, we must have a body which can be represented, and we need to have a dialogue with the urban development authorities and initiate this dialogue with them, and how a bottom-up approach can be dealt with, and how we can contribute actually in a physical planning of a city, and at a more comprehensive level rather than smaller projects or in an XYZ area. Like we are a comprehensive part of an full development plan is what I would look forward to in the near future in city planning process. And rather than a top-down approach. So that for me is very important. And in my academic practice, as I have seen that one of the components, let's say, for example, land use, it's more like a large zoning plan of a city. And that's where I feel like we need to look at land use in a very different way. We need to create intended land use patterns at a smaller scale, so that we are able to achieve sustainable densities, as what Yasho was saying, that we are not able to control our densities because we have left cities to grow, and then it is just not in our hands what happens. So if we start from bottom up approach, we will be able to allow cities to grow sustainable densities, well organized and efficient infrastructure, and at the same time compatible and resilient communities. That is the most inherent and heart of a good city, to say. So that's what I would like to say. And for a start, as a for urban designers, we can contribute in identifying critical neighborhoods, whether they are heritage neighborhoods or neighborhoods with blue areas. As Vishal was saying, we need to identify these critical neighborhoods and start analyzing them and incorporate them in a larger development plan at the beginning of a development plan, not as a random single project. That's a dialogue that an urban design body is created, that has a dialogue with the urban development authority of a city or something like that. Thank you. That's my take.
Yeah. So here a great point. We need to come together. We need to form organization and start dialogue. Great point made. Gitanjali, we would like to request Gitanjali to reflect on this question which I posed and for her concluding remarks.
Well, with an immediate effect, I just go back again. It's more to do with how does your way of life changes. It starts with that. And the people who talk about change, you have to be a change yourself. You just cannot be a catalyst, because catalysts are not change makers. They are not the changers. It's the one who practices change. So it reflects in the way your pedagogy is reworked at, because urban design cannot be a tool for meeting the needs of beautifying a city or providing certain kind of infrastructure. Because yes, I do believe the pandemic will come to an end, but then you have to be prepared for the next cycle or next to next cycle, which may happen once in 10 years or once in 15 years. So here's a question that you have: cities or villages or towns, they have different different sizes and different hierarchies of open spaces. How do you respond to these open spaces and urban voids as an immediate effect? How do you take responsibility as a community or as a student or as a teaching faculty? For me, nature plays an important role. So I keep nature as a topmost thing, that should become a base for any kind of intervention, whether it is urban design or planning. So what is it minimal what you can do at your own end? So can it start with the way you respond or you work with the nature, probably whether you can take a planting of trees within your campus, or can you take an ownership of immediate open spaces within your towns or a neighborhood or a chobara? Can you relook at it? Can that become a part of your awareness program? And while doing that, you're also preparing the community to participate. So participate doesn't mean at an end, or whether it is creating a development plan, as Hiral put it. Yes, the community plays an important role, but then it has to start from a point of while you're ideating, or whether you are designing, or, and for that matter, while implementing, and then later monitoring. So while doing this, the scales of operations, how do you fit in the informal sector? Because informal sector cannot get away from not using these open spaces, because most of the activities happens in these open spaces. For example, 1 in 7 people, that is 80% of 1 in 7 people working in the tourism sector are coming from the informal sector. So for my concern is that how do you respond to the informal sector while taking into consideration urban design as a tool for addressing these pandemics or cycles of different kind of disasters. That's it, Anubandh.
Yeah, thank you, Gitanjali. Yeah, great point made that yes, we need to look at green spaces again and perhaps do something new so that people get more and better green spaces. Now I request Rishikesh Ashtekar to provide his concluding remarks and how we can do something differently, how we can change things.
See, the first and foremost, actually, what is coming out of this kind of a discussion, let us bring down our operating skills. Let us look at neighborhood of the scales at which one can start making a difference. See, if you look at even today, you look at the way in which they made the containment zones. See, now the containment zones for pandemic, you are reducing the size, so you are actually looking at operational size which is much more smaller. What happens is that in the scale of a planning, or we actually end up, or even town planning schemes or any kind of this kind of a systems, you look at a very large scale of design and implementation. Now if you reduce that scale, the neighborhood or a specific kind of aspect where you look at providing the basic amenities and the social infrastructure and all these things, or as Yashodhan pointed out, that there being a growth center which are connected by a network of good, not just roads, but maybe metro systems, transportation, public transport, and all these things looking to the larger cities. So, in my opinion, what I can conclude by saying that let us start the role of urban design on a more on neighborhood scale, where we are planning them in detail, and then maybe multiple of these neighborhoods actually might make a good city, or can also give a growth kind of growth cell for the city further on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Rishikesh for great comments. I now request Kamesh Srinivasan to talk about how things can be changed, what he would like to change as his concluding remarks. Kamesh.
What I would like to change? Brilliant. Okay, so my take after listening to all these things and coming from what I have learned, again, three things. One, get into business. Don't say that I am in gray area. Either push you up, write policies that will help you to get into the gray area much more effectively, or get down and design your own plot that is responsive enough to the public realm. So get into business. Second thing, as Yashodhan mentioned, go and influence every users of the urban space, either through educating them or making them to do what we want to do. That's second thing. And the third thing, touching back to what we said earlier, take care of others. And in that reference, guys, I read a WHO article yesterday, and it says until July, India is at risk in terms of what is happening, the way the curve is working. So be safe, stay healthy, take a lot of antibodies, providing vegetables, and take care of each other. Great to have you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Kamesh. Yes, so the point is that design, influence, and take care of people around you. So that's a great point to conclude your remarks. Yeah, so now I request Rahul Navle to speak on the question which I raised. Rahul.
Yeah, so it's what we can change. I would like to academics in the sense that need to teach students. I don't say teach, but make students visualize what they're doing. Because if you see outside in the cities, it's all about architecture. All the buildings are designed by the students. And if the students are taught to visualize, probably they will be able to relate what is there within the plot and what is there outside. So I think it's probably we all have, because almost all of us are to some extent partly or full-time. Second, profession is going to those authorities. Amish pointed out, get into the business, go to this bureaucrats and say that, okay, let us have a collective vision. We need to have a new lifestyle. We need to look that requires a lot of working. It's a small model wherein we have all these wards that are there in the cities. So you have those takers of the wards, we have those corporators, and we assign an individual officer from the municipal corporation, and every ward needs to come up with a program and say, okay, this is what we're doing with tackling the quality of life, dealing with the problems that we are facing, the pandemic that is there. So, something has to be worked on. Probably I will require, or we all should get on board. And yes, Yash pointed out a very relevant point. We need to look at densities. We have to visualize the densities differently. We cannot reduce the densities, but we have to redistribute it, because cities are the concentration of economies and densities are bound to be there. Anuman, I give it to you.
Yeah. So yes, great point to conclude. Look into the densities, manage the densities, and see how densities which we always thought are good and how they are reflecting on the time of pandemic. I now come to Shabir Lahiri for his remarks and concluding remarks. Shabir.
So, what I feel is that people should change their attitudes towards towns, cities, and government should frame strong policies for future growth. Like basically, there should be more public participation. That's what I feel. Thank you.
Okay, great, sweet and short point. That yes, government should relook into their approach towards cities. And yes, we all have agreement that we should be the catalyst of such change. Now I come to Vipa Zariwala for her response on the question as concluding remarks.
Anubandh, urban design today largely is a large-scale architectural project which is dealt in isolation. I feel I, as an urban designer, is equipped to think about the urban form and the design of the public realms more efficiently. So I, as an urban designer, or you as an urban designer, have to have a better responsible role in the planning process. That is one important point. The second important, so I built good cities. Second important point is the community participation or the people participation, because I need to maintain it for a longer period of time. And if people participate, if the community participates, it sustains for a longer period of time. Two important points. Thank
Right,
you.
great. So commitment is the thing which we are looking for. Just a point. Whether I missed Rishikesh? Rishikesh, did I miss you?
Covered me. No issues. I already spoken. Go ahead.
Yeah. Fine. So yeah. So sorry for that glitch in between. So yes, now we come to Now we come to Vishal Shah for his reflection on the question and concluding remarks.
Yeah, I would like to resonate with what Kamesh was talking about in terms of we playing a decisive role as urban designers. That's what the kind of change I would want, wherein, of course, it's not always about taking an authoritative position in an authority or something like that, but through whatever that we are doing, either in terms of teaching or in terms of research or in terms of being consultants to government bodies. I think we need to play a more decisive role and more as an influencer to the policies and the decisions that are taken in terms of how our city should be. So I think we need to get into that as a proactive player and not just wait till we are given some sort of a responsibility being identified. We'll have to be there, as the one who is envisioning what sort of development should be there. And I think that role needs to be assumed. And I think if that is done, whatever it's small or large scale, will make a big impact. So that's my take on what change should be there.
Great point. That yes, we should always commit, always make efforts and make sure that there is an impact, positive impact of our efforts. With this, we come to Yashodhan Tere for his reflection on the question as concluding remarks.
So, Anubandh, actually, I'm of a strong believer that in a country like India, there are certain things which comes with a law and an enforcement. If you imbibe on people, if it's there in the book of law, people will follow it. I think it's really important to know how the cities get developed. When cities get developed, there are private projects, there are public projects, there are community projects. I think we all have been emphasized on public and private partnership. But when you're talking about urban design, I think there is something which even gets contributed by the so-called private domain. You can't talk about a city like New York or a city like Paris just looking at its streets. There's somebody was mentioning about how human the Paris city is, and the Parisians care about it. I think it is important that if something comes in the book of law, people would be enforced to follow it. I think that is really important. There are very opportunities the urban designers get in terms of the public projects. It's important that there are planning authorities. We have seen in case of New Bombay where the planning authority was CIDCO, and there are many such other planning authorities which exist throughout the country. I think it's really important that there are rules and norms and compliances which are mentioned, because you're talking about an urban block. You can't see a street in isolation, you can't see an open space in isolation. There's always a backdrop to it. When today, I'm sure all of you must have visited Hutatma Chowk, Flora Fountain, both exist, but there is a backdrop to it. There's a backdrop to it of beautiful colonial buildings of British era. Now somebody has built it once with some sort of a detailing of the fenestrations, detailing of the scale, detailing of the proportions. So that's a private realm. You're talking about developing the cities and how urban design can contribute to it. Yes, I fully agree with my friends who mentioned about the neighborhood developments. Rahul emphasizing about how the ward and the municipalities can look into. But it's equally important that what the private realm can contribute to it. Because you can't live in something which is alien, wonderful street, but something which is happening beyond the street is not actually gelling with the street. We talk about Manhattan, buildings sitting right at the edge, but they do set back on the top. So you have a larger volume, which is so that building sitting on the edge, that particular person has taken care of it because it's enforced upon him. I think that partnership, that somewhere coming in black and white, is very important for somebody to follow it. I think that's what my take would be. Thanks, Anubandh.
Yeah, great point, Yashodhan, that yes, law plays important role, formalization of things play important role, and how everybody from their private realms need to come out and contribute to the publicness and public spaces. So yes, we have spoken, all of us have spoken, great points we all have raised. So I think we all 20 years back, not 20, 18 years back, when we completed our urban design course, we all became postgraduate urban designers. We started with a quest and we started our own diverse journeys of how we can make a difference. We went into different directions geographically, different directions in terms of our practice and profession. So somebody went to practice, some of us went to academics, but we all were always involved in academics as well as practice, I'm sure, in more or less manner. So we have seen academics, we have seen practice, all of us, and we wanted to make difference and we chose our own path. And after 20, 18 years, we are together here and reflecting upon what path we took and how this pause, which has been provided by, of course, very unfortunate event, but nonetheless, pause is pause, and we have come together and reflected on this thought that how now, how in what direction our own quest is taking what direction. And it's very, very encouraging to see that we have talked about different layers of governance to the social layer, economic layer, and also how all of these health matters also were raised in between, multidisciplinary issues and heritage, green open spaces, blue open spaces. We all talked about it, and we also all realized that we need people and commitment to put all of these things together to a meaningful urban realm, and it should be meaningful to the people. And also it has to be something which is grounded in the soil. It is not something which is coming from some other land. So we are all here, we are all looking into our own context, and we are all trying to make sense of the context to project it in future with this pause. So great points made by everybody, and with this my remark, I would like to conclude our session, and I would like to hand over to Jaideep. And we are all thankful to CEPT Alumni Office, Jaideep particularly, who is working with me since last 10-15 years, 15 days, and we all are also very happy that CEPT provided us this opportunity to discuss and reflect. So it's over to you, Jaideep. I think we can happily conclude our reunion now.
All right. It's great to see you guys. It's always it's a pleasure for me when I see people meet together after 30 years, 20 years, 15 years. It's always this sight, and you can see the love they have for CEPT and for each other, and it's a connection which lasts a lifetime, and that's what we are trying to do and achieve over here We want to do more things and more reunions and get people together. And such discussions can only take the dialogue further. So I thank you all. Thank you for taking time of your time from your busy life for sure. And we hope to do some more of these things. And one of these days we'll get it right. We had some issues today, but we look forward to see you in the future. So anyway, thank you once again, and it was pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you so
concluding that,
much.
Thank you, Jaideep.
yeah.
Thanks, Jaideep.
So
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
uh,
Hey, let us all thank Anubandh as well, man. This guy moderated
Yeah.
it so nicely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Manipulating all the wonderful Anubandh. Thanks for
My pleasure.
Wonderful,
for that.